Hi, Greg. Yes, we're going to start. We could start. It's 7:01. We have a quorum. Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, February 28th. It is 7:01, and we have a quorum. This is the regular ordinance committee meeting, and I am Laura Dancho, chairing this committee, and I'm calling it to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of our regular meeting on January 24th. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Pia, thank you very much. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. We have 6 of us here. 6. The next item is item 3.1. Is there a motion? You can't hear me? They're right here.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve item 3.1, an ordinance to amend Article 5 of the Code of the Town of Stratford, Section 22-01, Tax Incentive Program, and send to the Council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Pia. Is there a second? Ms. Sutton, thank you. Now we will move on to discussion. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Mr. Pia.
Ms. Stancha, thank you. So just wanted to give I wasn't actually at the council meeting a couple weeks ago. I was down in Aruba sitting on a beach, so thank you for all moving thing forward. I just wanted to give everybody a background on this as to how this came to be in the history behind it, because a lot of good work and hard work has gone in from town administrators. I want to thank Dawn. I want to thank Donna, Mr. Leclerc, Mr. Timniak, Mary Dean, Mayor Hoydick. And what we've been doing over the last couple of years is basically just after any tax abatement committee meeting, we have a conversation about, okay, this is still a living, working, breathing document. How do we continuously improve it for the long term in the town of Stratford? Obviously to use it to incentivize and retain businesses, but also making sure that this is something that's not going to hurt the town if we were to give it out, which is why we changed it about 3.5 years ago. Is there was a lot of gaps in it that the committee felt could actually hurt the town and put it in a bad situation. So the point of the changes that were presented to the council a couple weeks ago, now here in ordinance, are all very proactive measures that, like I said, continue to position the town to do the right thing and not basically force us into a corner that we have to do something that we may regret one day. Because at the end of the day, we don't have to give out any tax abatement or tax incentive. This should be used as a tool if necessary. And again, when I say a tool, but something that should be thought over very carefully, because we are giving out abatements, but it should be used to either incentivize a very lucrative opportunity to come to the town or to keep a very lucrative opportunity here. So I just wanted to kind of clear all that up so that everyone know we had a really almost an hour-long discussion on January 25th. It's on YouTube. It's great. We really just talked it out for an hour with Mr. Leclerc going through line by line, and that's why you see a lot of the red-lined items here. But I want to thank everybody, and I hope that brings some clarity to how this got to be.
Thank you, Mr. Pia. I was involved with the latest rewrite that was done in 2018, and it has been a work in progress. This is a living document. That doesn't mean that what we're going to do tonight is going to be the final version. In fact, we added a clause at the very end to ensure that this document gets reviewed every few years by whoever is sitting in these seats after we leave. Is there any other further discussion?
Madam Chair, just a quick question about the annual review by the town council. Is that something new, or has it always been annual?
You're talking about item 191-12?
Right.
Yes, that's new.
That's good, I think. Yes. Thanks.
That's to ensure that this document is always looked at by whoever's here. Definitely a positive change.
Madam Chair, through the chair?
Yes.
To Mr. O'Brien. And the reason, Bill, that came up, we felt strongly, the committee, is because the reality is, there's market trends that move and can move on an annual or biannual basis. Case in point, Mr. Vidal sits on, who's a commercial realtor, has extensive knowledge up and down Connecticut in commercial realty. You cannot You know, you cannot find distribution space right now for distribution warehousing space. That's something that is so incredibly hot, there's just no supply. So that was something that was one of the reasons that we led to removing distribution at this time, because why should we be getting, the thought of the committee was, why should we give out tax incentive for something that is in such high demand?
I think that's a good addition to review every year.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Hi, Laura.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Can, go ahead.
Yeah, I posed a number of questions when this was read at the town council. I thought, I'll have to lean on you guys for the answers then. Just noting that the tax abatement committee did not meet. I didn't write it down. The last time you met was to approve an abatement in 2019. You didn't meet in 2020, or maybe it was 21. I apologize for my dates, but you did have that 1-hour discussion recently, but the context of that didn't go into any of the rationale behind the reasons for these revisions. So my questions are,
So
I'll
the meeting was videotaped.
I did watch the videotape. I'd say 90% of it was around the process of how abatements would be approved, you know, the sequence of the procedures, if you will. So I'll get into the revisions to the abatements themselves. When the two presenters came for Center School, Chris, through the chair, Chris Pia, you may remember there was a discussion about mixed use and that a residential only property may not have been eligible for an abatement. But we have item A, real property, number 3, establishments with minimum. So I don't see mixed use in here.
So,
Through the,
go ahead, Mr. Pugh.
through the chair. So my comment that night, and I specifically remember because I was thinking about it for a good portion of the time, so I know exactly what I said. Anybody could check the tape is. I believe I phrased the question to Attorney Kubik and Mr. Romano at the time, is that we have set a precedent. Greg, you might remember this. We turned down on tax abatement, turned down, I believe, a Mr. Nazzardo about 3 years ago for the residential application. We turned him down. The reason for it is we do not give out tax abatements for 100% residential complexes. So my statement to Mr. Romano and to both builders, quite frankly, that night is, just so you guys are you aware that we don't give out for this? As part of that, though, I know that the component of that is an underground parking garage. I am not against carving out a specific percentage towards underground parking, nor have I, even before these guys, has nothing to do with them. But again, for total residential, I do not believe in getting out abatement for that.
Okay, so the item number 3, which reads establishments with minimum of 25 units providing housing and other transient guest services, that may seem to open the door for an abatement.
I would refer to Attorney Leclerc because we've worked on that. We didn't change anything.
Yes.
It's at the top. The first paragraph defines real property.
Correct.
And then it has 1 office space, 2 retail, and 3.
It was item 191-10, item 3A3.
Oh, thank you, Laura.
We were referring to hotels, I believe.
Correct.
That's what that refers to.
Correct, that's not changed.
Okay, that's unchanged. And nowhere in this abatement does it mention mixed use per se?
Yes, it does.
Item 12.
Number 12, same section.
Mixed use development, thank you, with not less than, very good. Do we have a town definition for mixed use?
Yes, we do in zoning.
Correct. Mr. Habansky has opined on this. Mixed use is a tract of land or building or structure developed for 2 or more different uses, including but not limited to residential, office, manufacturing, retail, public, or entertainment. Within the TOD, it's defined by the Stratford zoning regs as development contained on a single parcel that includes different complementary uses, both residential and non-residential, and which provide for a variety of activities throughout the day.
Okay.
Typically, your mixed use on a development is, a building where you may have retail or restaurants on the first floor, perhaps offices on the second, and residential above, or restaurants, businesses, dry cleaners,
Very good.
bodegas on the first floor with residential above.
Thank you for those two citations. And through the chair, just an open question to the Tax Abatement Committee. Would we consider municipal parking as mixed use in conjunction with residential?
Through the chair. So I'll specifically talk to that, Greg. So one of the reasons why, and again, these, to your opening statement, the meeting, we had the meeting on January 25th. Prior to that, there were meetings in 2021 because we approved 495 Lordship Boulevard. So we've had meetings, and a lot of the discussions about proactive ways to continuously improve this have been done amongst the committee members, saying we finished a call saying, okay, what can we get better at, right? And I've met personally with Donna and Mary Dean and Dawn to talk about this, and then we brought it to the committee. So that's where it came from. Specifically, in that meeting, we talked about adding in, if you notice on page 2, item number 13, right, in the same section that we were talking about before. All right, so if you notice, we redlined multi-level and we redlined a mass transit system. So we had in there a multi-level parking use necessary in connection with a mass transit system. One of the proposals as we talk this out to say, and again, these discussions happened well before the center school property even came to be. It really did. Was saying, listen, the point of this is to be able to have an arrow in our quiver if an opportunity presents itself for the town to take advantage. So we felt that, again, if you don't feel, you can make a motion to amend, but we felt after really talking this out that saying structured parking use necessary in connection with a municipal use, not a mass transit system, we would entertain as a tax abatement. That's how it came to be.
I like the way that revision reads. I was thinking of it more in conjunction with residential. Would municipal parking plus residential meet the committee's definition of mixed use?
Through the chair, Mr. Clare, I know we've talked this out at length. I personally like keeping these things separate line itemed. I have been professionally against giving out abatements for 189 condo units. I just don't believe in it. I don't think we have a good saturation of it to begin with. So I like keeping these. Separate. I just think it's cleaner.
Bill already brought up the deletion of the industrial warehouse and distribution. No problem. Municipal parking, no problem. The personal property aspect, which is section B. I don't know if anyone, I have in mind, if you're a manufacturing business in town and you want to, say, invest an additional $200,000, you're not buying new property, you're not changing the building. I feel that having the opportunity to apply for an abatement would be a good incentive to encourage them to invest here rather than somewhere else. So I have a preference. I have more questions, but this might be a time for me to offer an amendment to restore item B in part to include personal property, but not all the numbered aspects. We would not include item 5, industrial warehouse and distribution, for example. And maybe it's too early for an amendment, but if the group could consider restoring an aspect of personal property that would encourage businesses to invest here, maybe a restaurant that wants to buy new restaurant equipment, or manufacturing business that wants to grow its not expand its footprint, but increase its capacity within its existing footprint. Probably best if the committee considered that, so when we meet again with town council.
So if Mr. Pia would like to address that, I think we can answer your question now.
So I'll give you some clarity on it then. I'll give you clarity as to how it came to be, and I'll give you my opinion. And you can take it for what it's worth. We've given out one personal property abatement. The town of Stratford has given out one personal property abatement since 2016. Prior to that, and leading up to 2009, we probably have given out 2 or 3. And you can check that with Donna. Since 2016, we've issued 9 total abatements, 8 of which are enforced, 1 of which is 495 Lordship Boulevard, which will come on the books starting next year. So the conversation that came to be, and the personal property that was issued back in, I think, 2019 to 2 roads, okay? One of the biggest reasons, you touched on manufacturing, Greg. One of the biggest reasons that we talked about removing personal, especially towards that, is there's manufacturing tax credits through the state. And in this program, if you're applying for any state or federal grants or resources, you're not eligible to apply for municipal. So we felt that that was almost a duplication, and quite frankly, it should easily come out.
Right. It was redundant.
There's actually, Madam,
Go ahead, Mr.
for
Leclerc.
you to Mr. Pia, there's actually exemptions for manufacturing equipment, so it's not.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Tax exempt to begin with under a state program. So that's why the committee talked at length and listened to the assessor, that really expansions like 2 roads, those businesses that are doing manufacturing, get the manufacturing equipment exemption already. This would be redundant. And their focus on this was to try to bring businesses into the town and not necessarily look at a business that wants a few more pieces of equipment added on to their existing businesses.
And just to follow up to that second part of that, Greg, is the reason why personal property, and there were a lot of discussions around it, was, quite frankly, the incentive program, at least in my mindset, right, shouldn't be geared towards, and again, we want businesses of all shapes and sizes. I don't care if you're mom and pop up to a big industrial thing on Lordship Boulevard, but I don't want to be giving out, I don't think we should be in the business of giving out $8,000 to $12,000 tax abatements on every little piece of type of personal property equipment every month. Again, that's not what it's there for. I mean, again, you could look back and do due diligence. We've given out 8 of these since 2016 in the town-wide. So I think that would, 1, strain the resources of the tax assessor. 2, because someone's got to go out and inspect that and then keep a master list of growing that, and I don't want to burden the tax assessor or any administrator any more than they already are. But it wasn't there. So that's one of the biggest reasons the personal came out, and we felt strongly that on the real property can be used very, very effectively if people know about it. And again, the point of this is really to arm economic development department to say, listen, we really have something that's out there. Like, come to Stratford, talk to us. This is a good sales piece. So that's the background for it. So I like keeping it out, Greg, but that's at least the understanding as to why we talked this out and got to where we are.
Through the chair, would you consider new technologies? I'm thinking of data centers that are being built, usually in the north end of Connecticut, which we don't have one, and if we had a building that somebody already owned and they were just looking to double down on the amount of computer servers, for example, and they were going to spend X hundreds of thousands of dollars, would we encourage them to do it here versus at another location?
Through the chair, I think they can effectively use this, whether they're looking to expand, they can apply for, under the real property abatement, but, I still feel strongly that the real is sufficient enough to use this in an effective way, but also in a way that I don't want to give away the house, because this is Stratford taxpayer money, it's hard earned, and this would be something we should really be specific who we issue to. So that's why I was more set on the real property.
Okay, observation, we're keeping the 6-year real property abatement pretty much as is, and we're removing the $20 million 10-year abatement. And is this, there's no applications in process that would be impacted by any of these changes?
Go ahead, Mr. Pia.
Through the chair, no, there's not. The reasoning behind removing that, again, we felt it was something redundant, because there's nothing in there that states if somebody comes in and asks for a $20 million abatement, we can't discuss that. The average abatement for since 2016 has been between 3 and 5 years. The longest we've given out was the 8-year abatement to Erstep Biddle Properties in 2019-20, and that was 8 years. So again, we just felt it was a little redundant. We don't need that in there to give out a $20 million abatement. The biggest change there was cutting it from 10 to 6. And again, I just don't, I shouldn't say that, but talking out, we just didn't feel a 10-year abatement is something that we really need to do. 6 years, even if you did 6 years, we changed the language specifically, if you notice, that it says up to 100%. So we can give, hypothetically, 100% each year for 6 years as a max, the way this reads. So I think it's still got enough teeth to it, the way it is.
Okay. I did listen to the videotape. So the balance of this document kind of goes through how the applications will be initiated and processed. Thank you for that exercise. And as Mr. O'Brien noted, we're encouraging an annual basis, and that could just be a checkbox. It doesn't have to.
A checkbox, and we just felt strongly talking about this, even if it's once a year, even if you don't have an application come in for a year period, the committee should still meet and say, listen, what's the uptick in trends? Because to Mr. Vidal's point, you can't even find distribution square footage today. So why should we give out free money for that, right? But we could change, if 4 years from now it's completely different, we talk about it, we make a motion, we change it.
Okay, so I guess my primary two concerns, just to summarize, would be if we looked at real estate without, real property without true mixed use as defined in the zoning ordinance, that parking would be considered separate from mixed use. And the possibility for new technology investments and that personal property aspect. So those would be two hopes that I'd say if the committee can just be cautious of those or maybe amend those. I don't have an amendment, and thank you for preparing this for today.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Shea.
Hi. Thank you, and thank you for the explanations. I don't disagree with this. My question is, when and if this gets approved, I'm assuming we're going to move it through. How does Stratford then compare to our neighboring municipalities with the tax abatement? Did I miss that? I'm sorry that I was 3 minutes late.
Go ahead, Mr. Pia.
Through the chair. So the last time we conducted a regional research on that was back when Ms. Fonda was still the tax assessor. I worked with her on that. She looked into, I'd say, a dozen towns. Some don't have it. Off the top of my head, I honestly don't remember. And it was probably back in 2016. Most don't, a decent amount don't have it. A decent amount do. A decent amount really haven't enacted them, and I, quite frankly, I think the numbers speak for themselves. Like for the last, 6 years, we've only had 8 applications. So I wouldn't say it's negatively impacting us. I think there's opportunity for us to use it more, but use it effectively, and I think that's the purpose of it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm glad that we are reducing the time from 10 to 6. I have a problem with the tax abatements, especially when the south end, their taxes have been raised. It's hard to see how we're going to give tax breaks away. And so I just wanted to put that on record, that when people's taxes are going up, tax abatements are kind of hard to see being done.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. That's the whole purpose of having this policy, is to make sure that when we do have a company or an applicant come to us, that we make sure that it's going to be a benefit to the town, a company that would add jobs, and also eventually add to our tax base. So that's the whole point of this, to help the citizens overall, residents. Are there any other questions or concerns? Should I bring up that point?
If you'd like me to go through them. 2 items, Madam Chairman, through you. The first is 190-110. You may have noticed there was a problem with the automatic numbering. Recreational facilities should be new number 6, so we're just going to correct the numbering on that. I think it came off wrong on the red line. The second change we'd recommend is in 191-11, capital letter B, number 3 in parentheses, and then small letter A in parentheses, number 1 in parentheses. That's where the list is of year 1 through year 6. I think for clarity, number 1 should read as follows. During the period of construction, and then insert the following, and until the receipt of a certificate of occupancy, and then go back to the way it's written, but not greater than 18 months or such additional time as may be extended by the Tax Partnership Screening Committee, but not to exceed 6 additional months, 100% exempt. And then number 2, take out the words until the receipt of a certificate of occupancy, whichever shall first occur, 100% exempt then. So number 2 will read following such period or issuance of the certificate of occupancy. That just clarifies it a little more that it was the intent of the committee during construction and until the receipt of a C of O, they didn't want the exemption to start kicking in. They wanted to let the person who's doing this major construction have the benefit of doing the construction, but with a limited period of time, no more than 18 months plus 6 months, so that the building would get constructed and it wouldn't linger on, and it would be tax exempt, and then your schedule would kick in the 6 years at that point, where you can go up to 100, up to 100, up to 80, 60, 40, 20 for the next 6, with the committee coming up with the percentages. Up to 100 is from 0 to 100, so you have a lot of flexibility there based upon the project. So I would just recommend we make those changes to make it even more clear.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to amend the changes as noted by Town Attorney Leclerc.
Motion made
I'll
by
second.
Mr. Pia, second by Ms. Shake. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And back to the first motion, Mr. Leclerc, you said you had a second.
Well, the first one was the numbering. I just wanted to
Okay,
note that the
first
red line numbering was not working right. I'll make that, that's more of a Scribner, I think, just to correct the numbering in the beginning.
Madam Chair,
The main motion was, no, we just,
Sorry?
yeah, we just did that.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Pia?
one other Scribner's, just since we're talking about it.
Mhm.
Page 2, Mr. Leclerc, right at the top. Number 2, I'm sorry, not 2. My apologies. 1, 2, 3. Page 4, right at the top, under the newly added red 12, right at the end, from the dates of such denial, missing an E.
Oh, the word date is spelled wrong. Dat. Thank you. Dat. You need to correct the dat. Okay, are there any further questions on this? I think this is a great second draft from this committee anyway. Hearing no further discussion, I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion was Mr. Pia's original motion to approve
Send to the council with a favorable recommendation.
with a favorable recommendation, as amended, I suppose.
As amended.
Thank you. And that was seconded by Ms. Shake, and our vote is all in favor. Ms. Sutton? The original motion was by Ms. Sutton, you're right. All in favor? Is aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 9-0.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Pia, second by Mr. O'Brien. All in favor? Thank you, everyone.